Have you ever wondered what really drives the amazing people behind the hunting, fishing, and outdoor brands you know? Well, I did, so I set out to meet them. See, Aldo Leopold said there are some who can live without wild things and some who cannot. These are the exclusive interviews with those who cannot. My name is Kasey Mock. I'm an adventure hunter, avid outdoorsman, entrepreneur, and family man. This is the Bucks to Business podcast presented by Mock Ranches. The bow and arrow is one of the most primitive weapons known to man. Dating back to around 9000 BC, the bow served our ancestors as a weapon for both hunting and warfare until the widespread use of gunpowder in the 16th century. Pioneers like Fred Bear brought bow hunting to the masses in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, even lobbying for states to legalize recreational bow hunting. In fact, Mr. Bear and his wife actually lived in a tent alongside a river in Michigan in order to cut expenses until the industry took off and would support them financially. Today, archery is a multi-billion-dollar business, and modern bow and arrow technology is evolving so fast it'll make your head spin. On this episode of the Bucks to Business podcast, I stopped by Hoffy's Archery in Lampasas, Texas, to talk with master bow technician Aaron Barton. Aaron's a good friend of mine, and he's well known and highly regarded in the industry. We discuss how Aaron got into the archery business, some recent trends in the industry, and his opinion on some modern fads. I hope you enjoy this episode of Bucks to Business. All right, man, we're hot.
Okay. Roll.
We got it. We're live at Hoffy's Archery in Lampasas, Texas. I'm sitting here with Aaron Barton, the king of Texas archery. What does he call you? Is it Bo? What's he call you?
Yeah, it's kind of a running joke. There's only about 4 billboards up.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, if you drive through Lampasas, Aaron is a super sexy guy on the billboards holding a bow.
Yeah, that's why there's so many people doing U-turns to get out of town. It's kind of a running joke. It's the Bow Pro. But
the Bow Pro.
That was not a name that's not self-proclaimed.
I got you. Okay, so Aaron's a really good friend of mine. In all reality, I think the world of Aaron. I think he's one of the best bow technicians in the business, and I've dealt with a lot of them. I met Aaron about 3 years ago. Actually, it was longer than that because I've been with Bear for 3 years. I was with Obsession 2 years before that. So it's been
2011 at least.
2011 at least. And it was the craziest, biggest cluster how I met you because I had a client buying a bow. It was a Bowtech something. You were the only guy around that had the bow, okay? And I called you and said I need to order this bow. And you said, are you going to come set it up? And I said, well, it's for somebody else. So I'm just going to have to send you his measurements.
Yes. And
we can set the bow up.
Mm-hmm.
And you set it up. Mm-hmm. And the guy still shoots that bow today.
Right. That's
how I met you. It was probably 2011. So that would have been 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2011. Is it Bowtech Invasion?
Bowtech Invasion. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
We set it with beam and arrows.
I guess.
Yep. That's it. So Aaron is the manager, Bow Pro, master archery technician at Hoffy's Archery in Lampasas, Texas. We are 9 o'clock p.m. We just set up 2 bows for me, and they shoot incredibly freaking awesome. We set up the Bear BR33, and we set up the Obsession DEFCON 6.
Correct.
In about 2 weeks, I'll be back, and we're going to set up the new Bear Moment, the new 2017 Bear Moment. But it's 9 o'clock. We just hammered some Mountain Ops Yeti so we can stay awake and sound interesting on the podcast.
Right.
And I'm sure our wives are wondering where the heck we're at.
How long are your podcasts generally?
Like 3 hours. This is like Gritty Bowman style, like 3 hours.
They ain't got nothing on us.
No, that's good stuff. So if you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume you like to hunt. I bet you like to hunt for free even more. Go to feverpursuit.com/podcast and subscribe for a chance to win a free hunt. That's feverpursuit.com/podcast. So Aaron, why don't you introduce yourself, man? Who is Aaron Barton, the Bow Pro?
I would say that Aaron Barton is just a regular guy, man. Honestly, I know as cliche as that sounds. I mean, people come in, they want to get their bow set up, right?
Yep.
So they're like, hey, I'm coming. You know, it's kind of like a doctor, right? And a preacher. Everybody likes to get comfortable with, I've been told by 3 things, right? Somebody moves into
So
a new
you're like
town,
a proctologist is what you're telling us?
Yes, but I have short fingers.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. Guys come in, they move into a new area. I've been told this. They said, there's 3 things they look for whenever they come in. They look for a good doctor, a good church, and a good bow technician.
Yep.
Okay? It depends on how, and that's arguable in terms of order of preference, right?
You bet.
So,
You bet.
Anyway, I guess as far as who I am in general, I don't know. Honestly, that's a hard answer. That's a hard
You got
question.
kids?
I do. I have a little girl, Scout. Wife, been married for, I better remember this, hold on.
Oh, you're messing up
13 years.
The big stage. You nailed it.
Yeah, 13 years.
That's good.
So my wife, Katie. So there's nothing interesting, man. I'll tell you this. I'm pretty boring in actuality. If you look at the breadcrumbs on my truck, you know, where it shows you where you go.
Yeah, sure.
It's pretty lame. So it's home to work. I don't really venture off, you know, the beaten path. Weekends, I go check trail cameras. If I get out to hunt,
Big turkey hunter.
love it.
Yeah,
Passionate. You know what? That's what defines me after work, honestly. I'm a passionate turkey bow hunter. Absolutely.
Yeah, when we first met, I asked you one time you wanted to come to our family place up the road here and hunt deer, and you were like, not interested. You got any turkeys?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Feathers just do it, man.
You hunt them all over the country or just here locally?
I do. I hunt wherever there's turkey population, that's where I'm going to go. Obviously, I try to go. I do it on a shoestring budget. That's the cool thing about bow hunt turkeys.
Yeah.
Is you can do it, and I don't want to turn this podcast into it, but we'll say that for another time. But bow hunt turkeys is, you can do it. You can do 7, 8, 10 birds on what you can pay generally for a good mule deer or elk hunt. Easily.
I know guys.
Even less.
I know
actually.
guys that are so eat up with turkeys. Like they go. Well, my buddy Chris, who I hunt elk with, Chris goes to the same area in Colorado that we hunt elk to hunt Merriam's turkeys every year in the snow. He goes all over the country hunting turkeys. I don't get it. But I wasn't raised doing it.
Well, really and truly, my dad was. So my dad hunted turkeys with a shotgun, atypically, and a lot of times it's acclimation, okay? It's a graduation process as far as how with turkeys, it's all about the sounds, the sight, and the smells, okay? Like, I've never been elk hunting, so I can't really relate to it. But people have told me, said, Aaron, you need to go hunt elk.
Yeah,
do.
If you like calling turkeys, you'll like elk.
And they say it's like hunting a 700-pound turkey.
Yeah, with giant antlers. The biggest difference is the smell. That's what my buddies always say. It's the smell. It's elk are like hunting turkeys, but only they smell.
Right. And I guess the reason why I'm so passionate about bow hunting turkeys is because I have so much respect for that bird and how hard it is. It's not impossible, but the one thing people don't understand is it's a labor of love. You have to be able to work, especially with a bow. You have to be willing to work for it and be able to get that reward in order to see, to be consistently successful with a bow takes a lot.
Do you hunt them out of a pop-up, or do you hunt them just on the ground?
Kind of 50-50, depends on how the situation lends itself. You know what I mean? If terrain allows and I can't set up a ground blind in time, and I've got a completely different system from what other people traditionally use, like a pop-up blind. It's kind of a homemade blind that I've used with guys. It's actually a homemade blind from a guy in Alabama who's kind of I guess you could say my mentor.
He's your turkey mentor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's like my Mr. Miyagi. You know what I mean?
Do y'all practice the fly down cackle? I don't know if it'll catch this.
No, well, I've never heard one gobble in flight, so
that shows you how much turkey hunter I am,
that's
man.
right. Yeah, we need to work on that.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to, I guess I can get off subject on that real good.
Hey,
real
it's
easy.
all good, man.
I'm pretty boring. I love bow hunting turkeys. I love bow hunting in general.
You're a super humble guy. That's one thing I like about you. You're a super humble guy.
Well, thanks, I think.
That's good.
That's good, I guess.
That's a compliment.
Sense. Yes, it is. I'll take it.
That's a compliment.
I'll take it.
Yeah, that's good stuff. How'd you get in the archery business? Like, how long have you been in the industry?
Retail-wise, going on 8 years. Started in retail late 2008 while I was still working for Pepsi Bottling Group out of Austin. Okay. Kind of was doing it actually out of my garage. Okay. And helping guys here and there and getting their bows tuned up and it's always been a passion of mine. And I know people say, well, you shouldn't do your passion as a job. To date, I've been no regrets, none whatsoever. A lot of people will, at least it hadn't hit me yet. You had
we got into that topic on episode 1. If you go back and listen to our first episode, my buddy Scott Willingham interviews me, and we kind of lay out the format of the podcast or whatever. But we get into that because so many people make their passion one of their favorite things. Yeah. They go turn that into a job. If they're successful, it demands a lot of time because most successful businesses do.
Right.
And you look up one day and the last thing you want to talk about is archery. Or the last thing you want to talk about is hunting.
Let me tell you something. This is the crazy thing. And this is, I go home, right? And I guess this is a compliment from my wife. She says, you must really, and this wasn't long ago. It's probably about a year and a half ago. She goes, Aaron, you must really love what you do. And I said, why is that? She goes, you come home and you study it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You go out and you do it for fun, and you come home and you study about it, regardless of the day, the time, or whatever. You're constantly studying the whole sport in general, and I guess that's another thing that defines me. If I'm going to do something, right? It's hard. I won't do things halfway. I'll walk away if I can't do it full tilt. I'm out.
Well, you learn about successful people. There's people that can get along a little bit on talent and good looks. I'm not either one of those people. So you're better looking than I am, though. I don't have my face on a billboard.
That's true. That's true.
So, but in all seriousness,
not yet.
Not yet. People that are experts in their field, they make a commitment to mastery, and so you're a student of archery. Right?
Sure.
And that's how you keep your competitive edge. And you see people that get into an industry, if they're not a student of it and they don't commit to mastery, which takes a ton of freaking time and studying, they lose their edge at some point. The second reason is you burn out. You get into it for the wrong reason. You're just chasing the money.
Absolutely.
You see this as an industry to go make money, or you don't have a big enough drive. You don't have a big enough motor inside to keep you going, and you burn out. And then you lose your edge. The third thing we see, though, is I relate this to, matter of fact, in a previous episode, we talked about a bow technician. If they're going to be, in my mind, if you're going to be the best bow technician, you better be practicing archery so that you can be good at that.
Sure.
If you're going to be a really good fly casting instructor, you need to be fly fishing on a regular basis so you don't lose your edge with fly casting, or you don't lose, you stay up to date with the latest products and technology or whatever the case may be. And so that's cool, man. To have that kind of passion for something and go home and study it after you put in the hours that you put in here every day, because you've got to be like on a 60-hour week here in the shop.
Yes, at a minimum. At a minimum, it's probably 55 at a minimum. And you know what? I can live with that as long as the rewards will show itself.
Sure,
and we've already seen the effects of where it's going. I will tell you this, that talking about passion and people that are really like to do their job and what have you, you do have challenges every day, doing your passion. But I will tell you this: there's this sport in general. I'm not the greatest shot in the world. I promise you that, right? I don't know everything there is about archery. I won't ever claim to. Very open-minded at listening to other people's thoughts and constantly, basically, a student of the game for life.
Right.
If you're not, I think that's what turns people away. Honestly, Kasey is pro shops that are, you walk into a very egocentric shop, or you walk into a very intimidating, should I say, store, and people are in there, and you don't know. You're very standoffish, and I see that with the customers. I do see that, but I give them a little bit of space. But you don't know what their prior experiences are before. So, long story short,
we've all been into those shops, right? You walk in, and the technician or the guy behind the counter loves to tell you how smart he is, and like I've felt so sorry for people because I shoot good gear. I'm very fortunate to be on some pro teams where we get the latest stuff. But not everybody has that. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, believe me, go to a 3D shoot or go to your local archery shop and see what some of these guys carry in, and you understand why so many deer might be wounded in the woods.
Sure.
Separate topic.
Sure.
But, some dude brings in a bow that's 10 years old, okay? It needs strings. Mm-hmm. He's shooting mismatch arrows. But that's what he can afford.
Sure.
And he's coming to you to tune the thing up and get him in the woods so he can go make an ethical kill, take his kids hunting, provide some meat for his table, whatever. We've all been in shops where the guy behind the counter just like completely talks down to that guy. Like, you shouldn't be in here with that old equipment. Mm-hmm. And I know so much more than you about archery. You shouldn't have this rest. This rest is no good. Yeah, man, that's a huge turnoff.
You wonder why, right? Why people are standoffish when they walk into retail settings.
Yeah,
regardless.
That's why they're intimidated, right?
Right, absolutely.
Archery's not intuitive like picking up a gun, looking through the scope, and pulling the trigger.
It's very, very, very personal.
It is.
It's very individual. Like, there's not a universal bow, right? There is. It's called a crossbow, right?
Sure.
That's more universal
right.
in attempt to
makes sense.
For
it's more intuitive, right? You pick it up, you aim through the scope, if you have a good solid rest and the thing is sighted and you pull the trigger, boom, hits the same place every time. Done. You don't have to draw it back with an animal in front of you.
Correct.
You don't have to hold it at full draw, holding poundage.
It does, unfortunately, require less practice.
Sure.
It's sighted in. There's no holding weight. So, yes.
Not a static crossbows. I mean, people want to hunt that way.
No, absolutely
There's
not.
people that can't pull back a bow. There's kids. And my son is 2 years old, and this may not be a PC thing to say, but he's 2 years old, and I'm already teaching him how to shoot a crossbow. I've got one of these little PSE zombie defense things that you have right here.
Right, just in case.
Just in case.
Right.
Just in case Hillary wins or whatever happens. And I've got one of these zombie defense crossbows, and my 2-year-old sits in my lap. We shoot that thing.
Perfect.
He knows what to do.
Right. It's a transitional tool.
Yeah.
Right. Now, Pope and Young doesn't obviously consider that a method means for
archery.
Thing. Right.
For
but
archery,
is most people try to fight that. It's here to stay. So I think it's a great transitional tool. If you can get...
It's great for the industry. It gets people into hunting that wouldn't ordinarily be.
Absolutely. Now...
We're going to get outvoted. That's what people get all off on this crossbow thing. And they say, hell with the crossbows. They have no space in hunting, or they certainly shouldn't be used during archery season. The crossbows need to compete with shotgun muzzleloader or rifle season, if that's what they're going to do. Here's what I think. Do I think a crossbow is as challenging as me or you walking out through there trying to draw a bow and hold one? Not at all. But at the end of the day, we need more hunters getting into the sport to protect our rights to do it, and crossbow gets more people in the industry.
Regardless of where it's at, right, as far as where it falls on the board of ethics and, principles of hunting and what have you, it's still a transitional tool. Here's where I think this is where Texas Parks and Wildlife for sure has helped. I can see this helping. Very, very good at bringing, let's say, a young youth into the sport, right? Girl or boy, to help. There's a lot of kids that don't like the recoil or the noise that's associated with a firearm, right? Long gun,
I don't either.
Whatever. I don't either. I'm not a big fan of recoil. I mean, so here's where I see that.
That's why the suppressors are getting. It's one reason.
Absolutely.
The suppressors are getting so popular in hunting.
But from the crossbow standpoint, it's ambidextrous, left or right eye dominant. Okay, you get them close. Right. Here's the deal. It's still It's still a very primitive short range weapon. Okay, that people see scopes on it, they think, oh, how far can this thing shoot? Well, anything. I can shoot a recurve 200 yards. I'm not guaranteeing where it's going to go, right?
Exactly.
Crossbows still under the speed of sound. Speed of sound's 1,190 foot a second approximation. Don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure that's close. So at 1,190 foot a second, you shoot a crossbow at 350 foot a second. Well, guess what? It's still well below the speed of sound, right? So you still need to keep it close, a close-in distance. If that can get kids, women, new people in the sport, young, old alike, to where they can appreciate how close that animal is, respect their natural state of how they act. You can't...
Try this on. So I have clients all the time through our hunting business and through the real estate firm, whatever, that buy a ranch or they come hunt with us, and they always start out rifle. This particular demographic of client tends to be a little affluent. not much time to practice archery. They don't want to go wound an animal, so they're rifle hunters.
Sure.
Okay? That's what they turn into. They go kill a few animals with a rifle. They harvest a trophy buck or two with the rifle. Or we take them out to Colorado and they shoot an elk with a rifle. And here in Texas, predominantly most of those deer are harvested out of a box blind. Corn feeder 100 yards down the Sendero or over a food plot. And that's fun a few times. And for a lot of people, that loses its appeal.
Sure.
And so they're like, man, how cool would it be to be up close with them and hear them eating and have to be concerned about smell, but I just don't want to. I don't have the time to learn how to bow hunt. I'm scared I'm going to wound them.
Sure.
They don't want to go through that learning curve because it's a.
Right.
When you first get into archery, man, look, the reality is you're going to wound animals. You're going to wound animals. I've been bow hunting now for probably 20 years, and I shoot 30 arrows a day with the best equipment you can buy, and I still will wound animals periodically.
Here's a misnomer.
It happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
But those people, they'll pick up a crossbow and they'll go get in a double bull blind or get in a tree stand, and it brings hunting into a whole new light because now they feel intimately connected with that animal. They feel like they're having to be a predator. They're having to actually hunt, manage their scent, be quiet.
Absolutely.
It brings hunting into a new light.
It does. You still got to be close, right?
Yeah.
You still got to be close. To me, regardless of what tool you use in the archery industry, it's all about, to me, it's all about that inner. It's all about that relationship. It's all about that closeness. It's all
That's
about.
what I love about it.
I don't think that could be replaced and never can be replaced. I think that's the attraction. It'll always be the attraction. I think Fred Bear said this. You will never. You'll learn more in your first year of bow hunting than you will in a lifetime of gun hunting.
Without a
I don't
doubt.
even know. No, I could be wrong.
Yeah,
Fred Bear
without
might
a
not have
doubt,
said that,
though.
but it sounded good.
It sounded good. Give credit.
He's got a lot of.
Get credit to the grandfather.
If
of
he didn't
archery.
say it, he probably said it before.
He thought it.
Yeah.
Crossbows were nowhere on our script.
Hey,
I think we beat that horse. That
That's
was good,
fine.
though. It's good
That's
to talk
fine.
about that.
No, it's a
a
good-
lot of people want to hear about that.
they need to.
You sell
it's-
crossbows here?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean,
How many people walk into your store? Well, let's talk about the store. So the store is called what? Hoffy's Archery?
Hoffy's Archery. Yes, sir.
That's
Lampasas.
affiliated somehow with the Hoffpower Group?
It's affiliated with Lee Hoffpower, who is
Okay.
the sole owner of Hoffy's Archery. Correct.
Okay. How did you and Lee get hooked up? I've met Lee through the Texas Wildlife Association.
Okay.
He's a big supporter of TWA. Does a lot for conservation here through TWA, through what's the Hoffpower's ATV Super Center up in
Sure,
Goldthwaite.
Outdoor Superstore.
Yep. So they do a lot for TWA and fundraising stuff for conservation. That's the only way I knew Lee until today when he walked in here. How'd you and Lee hook up? Besides just being two like-minded guys in Lampasas.
Lee, apparently, I've always been on his radar.
Okay.
As far as because all of his businesses are tied to outdoor industry.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
You got
yes.
the Polaris. You got the Chevy, the Ford. You've got the
Ranch-
Hoffpower Ranch and Supply
Ranch and
store,
Supply
the
right down the road.
dealership, the
Yep.
guns, everything. Okay. So he's in his circle. Everything's tied in together, right? Except archery. It was always something that I think had appealed to him as far as bringing in more business and what have you. So, and not only more business, but if you have a one-stop shop, it's always a lot more convenient.
You
for
bet.
people, right? So,
Well, Lee's a business guy. He sees opportunity.
absolutely. He's also, but he's also a hunter.
Hardcore hunter.
Right.
No doubt. He's got a big old brown bear over here he killed in Alaska last year.
Correct.
I guess that's his brown bear.
Sure, he'll claim it.
Okay.
He'll claim it.
Maybe we'll have to set Lee up on a brown bear hunt.
Right.
Yeah, he's a business guy, though, so he sees opportunity to get into a fun industry, connected to industries that he's interested in.
Sure.
And also, like I am, anytime you can go find a really super talented person and bring them in your life, if you can make that pencil out, you usually try to create an opportunity around them.
Sure.
And I see that from the outside looking in, that Lee went and found the best in the business, created opportunity to bring that person into his family of companies, into his life. And so I think that's a compliment to what you've done, because we do that, man. That's, at the end of the day, the people that you have in your businesses define your success. People do business with people. And so I see that. That's a compliment to you, by the way.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you.
Can I ask you another crossbow question?
Sure.
because now you got me interested.
Okay.
10 people walk into the door of Hoffy's Archery this week.
Okay.
How many of them want to look at traditional, compound, or crossbows?
Honestly, it depends on the age demographic and people's work ethic. Honestly, it's crazy because the age somewhat determines on what level you decide what route you want to go. Right?
Let me ask it a different way.
Okay.
Of every 10 bows you sell, how many are trad bows, how many are compounds, and how many are crossbows?
Oh.
Do I need to ask a bigger number?
No, I'd probably say it's probably a good guesstimate is generally 75% compound.
Okay.
Right? Probably 15% to 20% crossbow, 5% traditional.
Not many trad shooters.
There are, but most of those traditional shooters, right, that are doing it going from a traditional into or are already in that traditional spectrum, do their own thing. Okay, they're very independent guys. Most guys that do their own trad,
They'll make their own arrows and stuff.
They make their own bows, right?
No kidding.
Yeah, they'll make their own bows out of a Osage tree or it just depends. They'll make their own longbows. So those guys want to be those, and I say those guys, I'm an archer too, but I'm saying the die-hard traditional guys will spend as much on a custom-made longbow or recurve with elk antler tips and rattlesnake and copperhead skins on the bow,
You bet.
getting what they want. What we offer here is for, the guy that wants to, we've got Fred Bear. I mean, we can get Fred Bear traditional bows for guys that want to spin that, for that Purple Heart riser and
the Super Kodiak.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. Those guys that know
I almost
what they
ordered
want.
one of those the other day. I was looking really hard when I ordered the Bear Moment, the bow that I've got coming. I was really close to ordering a trad bow because I thought it'd be a new challenge.
Sure.
And it's kind of the fad, right? I mean, a lot of people are. You look at like Aaron Ray Snyder on the Gritty Bowman and South Cox, and there's a lot of people going. What's the guy on Outback Outdoors? One of the hosts of Outback had Trevin Stolfus. A lot of guys in the mainstream hunting industry are kind of going the trad route. And it's kind of the cool thing. And I told you this afternoon that I'm like a pet raccoon. If it's shiny and new and fun, I want to touch it and feel it and play with it. And so I almost ordered a trad bow. But I did like any smart guy should do, because I typically don't make decisions this way. And I didn't want to make an impulse purchase. So I asked some buddies that shoot trad, what bow do I need to get? What do I need to expect? And they said, dude, you need to practice like an hour a day.
Yes.
And you need to shoot 4 or 5 or 6 different bows to see which one you mesh with. I don't have the time to do that. I ordered a compound.
Well, that's a compliment to you because it's a commitment. Anything in archery is a commitment, right?
I don't want to be flinging arrows out there wounding stuff.
Right. Well, and who does? I mean, who does? If you get into archery and you're not out there, nobody's out there to wound anything,
Sure, yeah.
right? So it's like golf, okay? I'm not a golfer, but people that play golf, they say
They play a lot of golf.
You have to play in order to be. It's a finesse sport, right? It's a finesse. So it's very similar. Traditional archery is very similar in regards to golf. You have to do it every day, religiously, rain or shine, and you need to be out there, slinging good arrows, not just slinging arrows, but slinging good arrows and perfecting that
It's like
craft.
I related a lot to fly fishing. I just picked up fly fishing, and if I fly fish every day, which I'm on ranches almost every day, and so I carry my fly rod. I've got a really good friend that gave me an Orvis trout bum, and it's a sweet little rod, lightweight, 4-weight rod. But it's a finesse deal, right? So if I'm out there and I fish every day, like 10 casts, right? Try to catch a panfish or a little bass or something. If I cast every day, my cast is nice. If I skip 4 or 5 days, granted, I've only been doing this a couple months.
You'll pierce your ear.
Yeah, I'll pierce my ear, or I'll hang up in every tree, or I'll just throw a big old wad of fly line out there and slap the water.
And leave it in the water.
Yeah, leave it in the water.
Deep six
Never
it.
works. It doesn't work very good.
Yeah, traditional is just, it is what it is. I mean, it's instinctive.
So what drives you? I think you're super talented, man. What drives you to be the best in this industry? Because you've got a reputation that's very good. You're not on social media. You're like one of these old farts that's resistant to it. So you don't hear some of this.
But some of the archery forums on social media, you're very well respected. What drives you to be the best in the industry?
It's a good question. I'm competitive, very competitive.
Yeah.
I'm more competitive with myself than I am other people. So I'm my own worst enemy, and I don't like letting people down, regardless of who it is. At least that's the way I feel. I'm always worried, in a sense, about other people's feelings, and maybe that's my downfall, but I also kind of consider it a plus in my life, because I think if you don't incorporate that into your life as far as people's feelings and how they, here's the deal. I think what drives me is this is discretionary dollars that people are spending, correct? This
Yep.
is my livelihood.
Yeah, it's completely recreational for us.
Absolutely.
It's your livelihood.
But it's also my lifestyle,
Yeah.
right? So it's my livelihood, but it's also my lifestyle. So, people are spending discretionary dollars, right? They don't have to spend money here in this industry, or they don't have to step foot in here. So for them to make that commitment to step in here, I can appreciate that, right? So it's hard to, I don't know. That's a good question. I really don't know how to answer that without going off on different tangents. But
Yeah, you get a lot of people that walk in here that probably spend maybe up to 5% of their annual income in your store. Think about it that way.
right,
But if you walk in here and you buy a bow, and you spend $1,500 on the bow, and you get you a case and a target and a dozen arrows and some broadheads, you're going to spend what, $2,300 probably, somewhere around there?
it depends. It's at a minimum, if you do it right, like, if you buy nice, not twice type of thing.
Yeah, right.
You'll probably spend
You can spend a couple grand.
easily.
Easily.
But,
Easily.
But, that if that's the guy that comes in, he knows what he wants, right? He's like, I'm committing to this 100%. Not that you have to spend $2,000 to get into
Well,
this
sure,
sport,
you don't. You
but-
can get in sport for a few $100.
Right.
But there's a lot of people that will come spend $2,000. They've been saving money.
Absolutely.
This is going to be, if you look at the average income of this area, a couple grand on a bow is going to be, 4 to 5 to 6% of somebody's annual income. That's a lot of money.
Absolutely.
And so it's important, I think, that you take that seriously, and I respect you for that.
Well, a successful archer is a happy archer, and a happy archer is be willing to spend money. That's the one thing about this business is yes, it's a discretionary dollars, but get this. I get blamed a lot, right, for the guys that come in. They're like, "Oh, Aaron, he sold me this. Oh, Aaron, I sold," and they're saying it in a playful manner, right?
Yeah,
I think they're just trying to confirm, and I use this quote a lot. I say, "Listen, I didn't sell you anything. All I did is confirm what you wanted."
Yeah.
And they're like, it's almost like, oh, yeah, but it sounds better to them that I sold it to them.
What is it about bow hunters? Like, I've got rifles that I've had since I was 10 years old. Mm-hmm. I still use them. Mm-hmm. They still shoot straight.
Right.
If I shoot straight. Ammunition hasn't changed much.
Nope.
What is it about bow hunters that every year we need a different bow? The bow doesn't really have a shelf life. I mean, I know guys that...
I'll tell you why. It looks, well, there's a couple twofold answers. Here's the shallow answer. Okay.
Yeah.
The shallow answer is it looks great in photo ops.
I think that's the reason.
Right. Fist bump.
I think social media is like your best friend in the archery business because
Absolutely.
it's a rush to be the cool guy.
The flip side to it is, as people think, well, all they're doing is reinventing the wheel. Okay. Atypically, you would think that, well, they're reinventing a bow. A bow will shoot an arrow, right? Whether it's from the 1970s, right, or till 2016.
Yep.
Yes, they will all kill. But I will tell you this, and this is not something, the technology has changed to where these engineers are starting to develop different things. String materials, honestly, is probably one of the things that they can always improve upon.
Oh, these bows are evolving like light speed.
But
every year you think, how can they get better?
Right. And
they get so much better. Like today, we're sitting here shooting these bows. And side by side, the differences are minute. But when you shoot them side by side, last year's bow compared to this year's bow, you start realizing there's a huge difference. I don't know how they continue getting better. Let me tell you why I think it is. I think it's easier to sell aspirin than it is to get people on a better diet. And so you're selling to the pain, and I think people don't practice enough. And so they go out, they're not proficient with their bow.
Amen.
And they wound a couple animals, or they go to the range and their buddies outshoot them. Mm-hmm. But maybe their buddies like you or I, and we shoot 20, 30, 40 arrows a day, and we keep our equipment tuned, and we check our arrows for balance, and the other guy doesn't. And so he blames his lack of proficiency with his bow on the bow. Or if you're like me, you like to justify your fancy new toys to your wife by saying, I've got to get a new bow, honey, so that I can.
But here's another thing. Guys are I say archers are superstitious in a sense, I would say.
Very, yeah.
So I say I'm not superstitious so much. However, I do have one. It's crazy my mind thinks this is. If I miss an animal, like right out of the gate, if I miss, generally, I know this sounds crazy. I probably won't hunt with that bow just because it's in my head now. Right?
No kidding?
Yeah, well, if the first one out of the gate. Like if it's the first one out of the gate, then I will atypically not hunt with it. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, it's time for me to change my luck. I know that, and I know that sounds crazy, but that's always been my mindset. So I make sure the first one counts.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
You know?
It makes sense. Hey guys, let's talk real estate for a second. Buying or selling a piece of land may be the largest financial transaction you'll ever make. Gary Keller once said, there are two kinds of real estate agents, those who list property and those who market property. At Mock Ranches, we are ranch marketing experts. So choose a real estate firm that specializes in land sales and understands land management. Learn more at mockranches.com and receive a free ranch map when you mention the Bucks to Business podcast. That's mockranches.com.
This month's featured listing is the Comanche Star Ranch in Comanche, Texas. Comanche Star totals 4,222 acres under contiguous high fence, making it the largest ranching operation currently available for sale in this region of Texas. The ranch is highlighted by 8 professionally managed lakes with income production from hunting, cattle, and farming. For information on this exclusive listing, contact the land specialist at Mock Ranches.
On different bows, okay? When we're talking about reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, what trends are you seeing? That's something I want to ask you.
Well,
what trends are you seeing in the industry when it comes to these bows? You know, there's bows, you know, we've got different nocks, you've got different styles of vanes, broadheads. You know, what trend are you seeing in the industry? What's the race everybody's trying to get to? Just like any other retail, right? Somebody solves this one problem, and they solve it first, and they win the race periodically. It's a hamster wheel,
sure.
Right? Next year, someone else comes up with something different. They reinvent the race. But what trend are you seeing in the industry?
Generally speaking, higher let-off bows,
okay.
Obviously. That's not been a real trend, but you're seeing more archery companies going to a higher let-off bow. Now, what
like
that...
an 80%?
90%.
Wow.
Okay, so you've got PSE just brought out their new 2017 lineup with the PSE Evolve. Well, the cool thing about that, the Evolve,
you're shooting the Carbon Air?
No, I'm waiting on the 2017. I'm still shooting a 2016 Decree TI.
Is that the carbon bow I picked up over there?
No, that is their aluminum Speed Freak bow from 2016.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. No, that Carbon Air, yeah, there's nothing.
That thing's legit.
Well,
I've never shot it.
Sure.
I don't go to the dark side of PSC. I'm just kidding.
That's okay.
I'm just kidding. I've never shot it. Holding that thing is like 5.2 pounds.
Sure.
That's loaded quiver. Fully set up.
That's completely
everything.
rigged out with a quiver full of arrows.
Bee stinger stabilizer.
Bee stinger stabilizer, QAD, black gold, single pin, ascent verdict sight, a tight spot quiver, 5.2 pounds with quiver installed with 5 arrows. Yes.
So is the race to get the lightest bow, because you see Hoyt going towards the carbon, you see Bear this year taking a lot of aluminum out of their riser with this chopped up looking riser. Is it speed? Is it weight? Is it let off? Or is it each one of them trying to position to be their one thing? Like elite is shootability.
Right.
They don't appear to be concerned with speed. Now this year
or
they made
weight or physical weight atypically.
Yeah. So let's just say elite shootability. Mm-hmm. You've got some speed freak bows out there. You've got some making a push to be the lightest. So is it that everybody's racing for the same goal, or are they actually trying to win their
No,
their division.
I think the diversity of each of the bow manufacturers is having enough options. I think when you limit yourself as a company and you don't listen to your consumer base is where you really start to see other companies are going to listen to those trends. If you're not listening to your consumers, which is the driving force behind, it's not the dealer, right? The dealer transfers that knowledge or that information over to the manufacturers to let them run with it. Now, I think the trends are going to be.
Let me hit on that real quick.
Okay.
So, some of the pro staffs I'm on, part of the deal is they require you to give honest feedback, and they don't want you to tickle their ears and say this is great stuff. Doesn't help them.
No.
We're required to go work events and listen to the consumers, see what the consumer feedback is on a certain product, what the consumer wants, what they like, don't like. If they're not buying the stuff, why are they not buying it? And send that feedback in. So these industries, they actually do want to get involved with the outdoorsmen and hear back from them. Mm-hmm. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it's the heart and soul.
Do they depend on you guys for some of that too?
Absolutely. I mean, here's the deal: if we're not sending the feedback or giving the feedback to our manufacturers, we're throwing our livelihood away in the trash too. I mean, you have to have that communication open, with the consumers, with the dealers. But the industry as a whole listens to that. I mean, that's the cool thing about the archery industry is I think there's so much diverse product lines out there to where people basically will choose a bow. One, there's your brand loyal crowd, right? But I think
you see that a lot.
You do, and that's fine. I mean, I would probably get shot if I was to buy a Chevy for myself or buy another, non-Chevy product. If my grandfather or my dad saw me driving it. But honestly, I don't care if it's paid for. I'm going to drive it. But if when people buy a bow and they've never bought a bow before in their life, the trend is generally what feels good in their hand. Honestly, you have to shoot multiple bows to find out what trend. It's not even a trend. What features are going to work for you? Yeah, I'm
a big speed guy. I really like a speed bow.
You have to be.
I don't know if
in
that's
a sense.
Well, you have to. Yeah, in some ways you have to be.
Well, you have to be whenever you have to consider it into your equation. Mm-hmm. When us as archers, you and me combined, probably don't have a draw length enough to get.
My drawing is 27 inches.
I'm 27, so we can't even reach our wallet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We got alligator arms.
Yeah, you can't even wipe your own butt. Like my son, he's 2 years old, and Dad.
Yeah,
because he can't reach.
So it's an important factor.
Yeah, speed. It is because you lose from off of 30. You lose about 10 feet per second.
10 feet per second for every inch of drawing. Correct.
So on a 27,
you've already lost 30 foot a second.
Bunch.
Right.
Yep.
So it's it's a definite factor.
Huh. Okay. So another trend I've seen in the industry is the whole, and I've got my own opinion on this from the outfitting business, is the whole single pin to multi-pin discussion.
Sure.
What do you see there? What's your opinion on the pins?
Depending upon the hunting style that somebody chooses. If somebody's going to be hunting here in Texas, right, most times it's atypically 20, 25-yard shots in the end, unless you're on field edges, right?
Yeah,
you're generally
whitetail.
hunting over feeders,
or whatever.
Hand corn stands, tight-knit brushed atypically, right?
Yeah.
So a single pin might serve somebody more, it'd be more advantageous, per se, to have a single pin where you don't have the clutter, right? Atypically, if that animal's past 30, you're going to be able to move that single pin to the exact yardage.
Not at the pin gap, whatever.
Right. And a lot of guys with their eyes and the speed of the bows plays a lot of factor into how tight those pins are. A lot of times your 20, 30, and 40-yard pins are so stacked on top of each other that it's almost hard to decipher which pin is what, and you're trying to play the pin gap. If you're both shooting a certain amount of speed or you've got, a certain distance that you're atypically going to be shooting, maybe a single pin is going to be better for somebody. Now, you go out west, there's a lot of people that fight the single pin movement as far as because they want to be able to shoot on the fly and know that atypically most good bow hunters can judge 20 to 40 yards, right? They know the distance to 20.
Yep.
Double that, you're at 40.
Yep.
So I tell you another trend, okay? Another trend has been the multi-pin sliders, okay?
Okay.
So you're seeing a 3-pin sight now that gives you
like
all
the
your...
Trophy Ridge React Trio. Montana
Perfect.
Black Gold makes one. Spot Hog makes
3-pin,
one.
absolutely. Tommy Hogs, Boss Hogs, yeah. You can get all of those in a 3-pin or 5-pin or sometimes a 7-pin configuration. Mm-hmm. So that allows you to shoot Doesn't have the clutter of, let's say we do the 3-pin.
It's not very intuitive for me though. I've shot them. Mm-hmm. I actually own a couple of the React Trios. Once I dial it out though, it's not as intuitive like when that animal moves. And let's say I've got my pin dialed to 63 yards and I'm using the bottom pin. If that animal keeps coming, it's not as intuitive for me to come up to the second pin or the top pin.
Sure.
Maybe it's me.
Right. It's whatever's going to float.
I do think it's a good balance though. It's interesting you say that because we see in the industry, in the outfitting, the hunting business, a lot of guys come out west to hunt mule deer and they come out west to hunt elk or pronghorn, whatever, and they bring these big single pin sights. Matter of fact, the bow you set up for me today has a single pin sight, mm-hmm. Trophy Ridge React 1 Pro. And I've hunted out west for desert mule deer, elk, pronghorn, sandhills mule deer, whitetail, of course, hundreds of them. And I'm with you. I think out west, the fixed pin sight is better. But you see guys like Cameron Haynes.
Sure.
Shoots the single pin, was he shoot a hogfather?
He shoots a hogfather with a long
way
extended
out
dovetail.
there, extended dovetail, single pin. And so people see him shooting that sight, and he's practicing at 120 yards a day or whatever, and they want to come hunt with that. I can't tell you how many bow hunters, though, I've seen. We've got an elk coming in, and this bull's coming looking for the caller. He's looking for the cow, and you got a guy over here fumbling with a rangefinder and trying to dial a sight. When you could have pre-ranged everything, drawn back, and shot the pin that he's at. And so last year on my, which hunt was it? Both my mule deer hunts last year, I guess. The desert mule deer hunt in New Mexico and Nebraska sandhills mule deer. Both hunts, I took a sliding pin sight. On the desert hunt, I took a single pin. On the Nebraska hunt, I took a 3-pin slider. Both times I wish I had a fixed pin. So my bow that I took to the mountains this year elk hunting had a fixed pin 7. Now I'm with you. The bow we just rigged is going to be a whitetail setup because that's all I'm going to hunt the rest of the year.
Sure.
And then I'll go into 3D in the summer when we'll shoot some long-range 3D stuff. And so I've got a single pin on it.
It's going to be dependent on what animal you hunt and how you hunt it, honestly. I think the precision, here's the deal with the single pin, okay? It offers the shooter more precision, okay? So it's a trade-off, right? If you want to dial that pin to 57.5 and you know that animal's not going to move, one, you're not gap shooting, right? Between a 5-pin. You're not having to play the pin gap. And a lot of times if you're out west, a single pin is going to play an advantage because it's all about knowing that sight and knowing your bow. Right?
I agree completely.
So if you're shooting at a longer distance, right, and you need to know, if let's say that animal, you've got your dial set at 25, and that's where you're going to leave it for going out west, right?
Yeah, you're going to shoot everything good from 20 to 30 or 20 to 35 even.
Maybe even 40, depending on how, it's just knowing
how
your
flat
holdover.
you shoot.
And if you're shooting at an elk vitals, you've got a pretty decent margin of error at probably 50 and in if you're holding
50 and
over.
in probably. I missed a bull this year that I guessed at 50 and shot for 50. Mm-hmm. Put it mid-rib. He was uphill at a pretty steep angle, but I have an arc compensating rangefinder. And this bull's uphill, up the mountain, dark timber, narrow shooting lane. I can see his mid-rib, put it right on him, shot for 50, and shot a couple inches under him. He was 59 yards. But I've probably got, with that bow I was shooting, what were you like?
Yeah, 270.
273 feet per second with a 100-grain tip.
Which is a great speed. I mean,
it's
for
fast
most people,
enough.
Right.
Yeah, I killed an elk 4 days later with it.
But the further you move out there.
Dude, I had like 20 inches of arrow drop between 50 and 60 yards or something.
Sure.
So,
that's where the speed comes in, right?
Yeah.
That's where that higher IBO speed bow. Drone length helps. But that's something we're born with, right? So we got to adapt and overcome that.
Now, you, my buddy Scott, they don't even chrono. You told me that earlier you don't know when the last time you shot a bow through a chronograph
I
was.
could care less honestly, I could care less about what poundage I'm shooting too. I mean, I shoot 55 pounds right now currently, 27-inch draw, shooting a 400. It's funny, I shoot a 485 grain weight arrow.
Holy smokes!
But here's the deal. I live at 25 and in around here in Texas. I don't get the opportunity.
Now, is that what you shot in Africa? Because you killed zebra, impala.
I shot 2 zebras, an impala, Gemsbuck, a kudu, an eland.
Those are big animals.
These are bigger animals than I will probably ever see
Now, you killed these all with 55-pound draw.
I shot 60 pounds,
Okay.
26.5-inch draw.
Okay.
With a 450 gram weight arrow, complete pass-throughs. So here's the deal. This is for another topic for another day. But
yeah, we're gonna run out of time.
It's
Most people would tell you horrible setup. Don't you? Wouldn't you agree?
I was shooting 200.
Like if you posted that on some bow hunting forum and said, "I'm going to Africa tomorrow and I'm taking a 420 grain arrow and I'm pulling 60 pounds, like at 250 feet per second or something. What do you think of my setup?" How many different opinions would you get?
You'd hear varying. I mean, you'd hear it'd be an array. I mean, you couldn't even keep up. But the guy would walk out of there more confused, probably buying a 90-pound bow.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah, most guys go over there. That's probably what they want to take. They want to take an 80-pound bow and shoot a super heavy arrow, heavy tip, because they think that's what they need to blow through them.
Cape Buffalo or something, I understand, where they're they've got ribs like lats.
Yeah.
Boards. But in terms of penetration, there's so many different factors. I'm not going to get into it, but it's plenty. It's plenty enough. I mean, I was shooting 240 foot a second. It's how fast I was shooting with a lighted knock. Okay, 240 foot a second.
Wow.
But however, I left my dial and never once moved it off of 20 yards. I wasn't going to shoot. I had already committed myself, because if it bleeds, you bought it over there.
Yeah, you mark them, you buy them.
Yeah, I'm not going to. I didn't want to set myself up for failure. It wasn't every animal that walked in there, whether it was $300 to shoot. I looked at it like this is hard, and it was very hard-earned money. So it's something that you got to take into the equation is limits. You have to know your physical limits, whether it's a 3-pin, a single pin, a 7-pin.
So important in bow hunting.
I mean, there's
so important in bow hunting.
And I think most people have an egocentrically.
Well, there's a big fad right now to push the limit and see if you can shoot consistently out to.
Do you know how small the
80
percentage
yards.
of archers that is? In the world, I'm not one of them, and I never will be one of them. Just based off of one, I'm going to always try to keep my shots here in Texas. Now that's a very here in Texas I'm going to try to keep it 25 and in at all times. And I know a lot of people say, "Golly, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure." No, honestly, I'm setting myself up because when I get back to full draw, and I think every archer should know this, when you get back to full draw. When you make that commitment to come to full draw, in your mind as an archer, there should be no doubts. You should know that when you get back to full draw, that animal.
If you're doubting whether you're going to kill him,
that animal is dead. That's the kind of confidence you need, and that comes from years of shooting, right? Confidence in your equipment. 90% of this game is confidence in your equipment. If you have just a smidgen of doubt in your equipment, you're better off watching hunting shows on your couch.
I'll agree with that for sure.
But again,
what's the furthest you've ever killed a whitetail?
32 yards.
I think I've killed one. I killed a whitetail at 67. I killed a mule deer at 97. I guess those are my far shots on big game animals. But I actually think it's harder to kill a whitetail. The hardest distance I think it is to kill a whitetail is 25 to 35 yards.
Absolutely, 100%. I 100% believe that.
Past about 35 or 40 yards, if you can hold the pin still and you can shoot proficiently. Now, I'm not advocating everybody go start slinging arrows at 60 yards, but it seems like their reaction's not there. When you're that far, they don't move because you're outside their comfort zone.
No.
Inside 25, you can pretty well drill them. But that 25 to 35 for me personally is a super hard
Here's the deal with Kansas, Illinois, all your Midwest states that have these bigger cavities of these deer. I don't know what it is about the hill country deer, not to get on that subject, but I think they all drink from a mountain ops, like
some
cranked
guns are
up.
fast,
I mean,
wired up.
They're just so much more wired differently than any other creature that I've been around. I mean, you guys from upstate will come down here and you guys hunt over feeders. Let me tell you something. It's not a guarantee. I reassure you.
Heck no.
You will probably, the odds of you killing a trophy deer around a feeder are good, but they're not great.
Dude,
They're
I killed a
natural.
deer. Today's Tuesday. I killed a deer last Friday. Deer aged at 8.5 years old. A native 8-point deer.
Wow. Geriatric.
Yeah, dude, he's like smooth mouth. 8.5 years old. We aged him. Had our biologist at the ranch, Jake Failer, age him. And I've hunted that deer for 3 years on this particular ranch. I've seen him for 4 years. Like, we'll see him once a year. This ranch, 2,000 acres, a resident deer doesn't leave. Matter of fact, the ranch is high fence, so it's not like he could leave. And people think, oh, high fence, you got feeders, canned hunt. Come on now. We hunted this deer, and I hunt a lot. I think I hunt well. 3 years now. I've seen the deer once in person before I killed him. He's on camera very little at the feeders. Not a deer that goes to the feeders a whole lot. Very dominant. Spends his time pushing does or hiding from us. Killed his deer. Second time I ever saw him in person. He came past a feeder, but he never stopped. He didn't stop and eat corn. I shot him out the side window of the blind. And the only reason I got a shot out of him is there was another buck behind him who was also on our hit list. That buck stopped to sniff a doe and took a bite of corn. And this deer I killed stopped, turned around to look at him, and I shot him. And it was like, he's there, he didn't stop, I shot him.
Yeah.
So these deer, these Texas deer, man, these hill country deer are cagey.
Right.
They're cagey animals.
And it's not something that's, I mean, it's definitely genetic. It's got to be. I mean,
I guess so.
I don't know.
I guess so.
I'll call it genetic.
I love it. So a lot of guys talk about, what are we at on time here? We're at 53 minutes. We still got a few minutes before people get bored with us. You hear a lot of guys talking about FOC.
Yes.
Define FOC
Front of
and
center.
its importance.
Front of center. I think.
Talking about arrow weight now.
Absolutely.
Somebody that's never heard FOC start like that.
A standard arrow is atypically with an aluminum insert, right?
Yep.
Or a 100-grain tip. So
Carbon shaft,
carbon
100 grain
shaft,
tip.
100-grain tip.
Insert weighs what?
12 to 15, 20 grains
Okay,
atypically,
perfect.
somewhere in there, okay?
Love it.
So front of center. You'll hear a lot of people negate it, right, as far as how important it is. I believe this is where my passion lies in terms of penetration, because that's how the game works, right, is penetration.
That's what it's all
Right?
about. You want two blood trails.
Yeah, you want entry, exit as much as possible, okay? Our game works off of hemorrhaging, not shock. So the more hemorrhaging you can cause based off of penetration,
Yep.
right, atypically, the more blood loss, the shorter the recovery,
More
yada,
ethical
yada.
to kill. Yeah.
So front of center, how does that play into penetration? It's basically what that does is that moves the front weight instead of distributing the weight of that arrow throughout the length of that arrow, is moving and shifting that weight up towards the front of that arrow. Okay,
Yeah.
so
if I was to set that arrow on a beam, on a balancing beam,
yes,
I would have more arrow. If you were to measure the arrow,
sure,
a 28-inch arrow shaft from nock to tip,
Mm-hmm.
I'd have more arrow on the back half, more inches of arrow on the back half towards the fletchings than I would have on the front, because more of the weight's on the front, so that balance beam moves towards the front of the arrow.
it's going to move towards the front of the arrow, which it's just like the equation is this, or kind of the crossover. Sorry, is take a dart.
Yep.
Okay, this was kind of I thought about this and I was going, it's the same concept. You take a dart, right? You're throwing darts with your buddies, right? You've all thrown darts and they don't have the fins on the back, right? All that weight on that dart, it's still going to stick in that wall, right? Transfer that weight towards the middle or towards the back. It's going to have a completely aerodynamic flight, right? So same concept, the dart. The rest of that dart is along for the ride. Same thing with throwing a baseball. You throw a baseball with a string attached to it, guess what? The rest of it is just along for the ride. That weight is pulling
One of
the
those
rest
Nerf
of it.
balls with like the arrows and the veins behind
Same
it.
thing.
Yeah,
Same
it's
thing.
along for the ride.
What that does, long range, penetration, it offers more downrange punch. Okay, a lot of people
Accuracy also in the wind,
absolutely
right?
less wind drift at longer distance. People, of course, shaft diameter plays a
Huge
little bit,
role.
Plays a little bit of into it, but I think front of center plays even more important part into how much wind drift or how little you have at long. It's heavier bullet weight, lighter bullet weight,
Yeah.
right? It's getting down there faster. And
Now, when it starts falling, front of center arrow,
yes,
when it starts falling, falls faster. Like, are my pin gaps going to be more between 70 and 80 with the heavy front center arrow?
Sure, it will.
Okay.
Now, here's the trade-off, right? A lot of people are worried about speed, right? They're worried about that trajectory loss. They're worried about that arrow not hitting where they're aiming. It's such a hard debate. Everything in archery is a trade-off, right? The one thing I won't personally ever go back to will be just a moderate based arrow. I can't believe for years I hunted with a low momentum based arrow, right? So, that's
arrow hits like a wet noodle.
Absolutely. I mean, here's the deal. As soon as the arrow leaves the bow, it's already slowing down. At initial launch, right? At initial launch, just say you're getting 290 foot a second out of your bow, right? It's slowing down with that lighter weight arrow as soon as it's leaving that bow because it doesn't have the momentum, right? So upon impact, the paradox of that arrow, as soon as it hits, guess what? That lighter weight arrow is more prone to deflection, more prone to not driving in. It's like, here's another analogy when it comes to momentum in front of center. Would you rather get hit with a baseball, right, thrown at 40 miles an hour, right,
Yep.
at the same distance, or a ping pong ball at the same or not? That's not a tennis ball.
Tennis
okay,
ball.
Same relation in terms of, but totally different weight, right? You
Yep.
could throw the tennis ball way faster at initial launch, but as soon as it gets there, it's gonna lose that momentum,
Yep.
right?
You lost all your kinetic energy.
Absolutely. Well, no, you've lost your momentum. Kinetic energy is a theory. That's where it becomes, people look at kinetic energy way too much, way too much now. The industry promotes speed, right? That's okay. You got to have speed in order to gain momentum. Or you got to have speed, I might be screwing this up. You got to have speed to help momentum out, and you got to have momentum. I probably screwed that up, Kasey.
No, you didn't screw it up. It makes sense.
You got to have both, right? Now, there's a point of diminishing returns where you can have almost too much momentum and lose, the speed where you're not getting that flatter trajectory.
You see guys shoot. I've seen guys come to deer camp, and they're like, dude, you got to check out my bow. This is the baddest thing. I'm shooting 310 feet per second. And you look at their arrow, and they're shooting like a 7 grain per inch arrow.
Mm-hmm.
So what is that? You're shooting an arrow that weighs less than 300 grains.
Yeah, I mean, if you
It doesn't matter how fast that thing's going. It's not going through a deer.
it's
Not when you try to put an 1.5 inch broadhead or 1.25 inch broadhead through something.
I want to tell you, if you're shooting, here's a crazy thing is, and I've done numerous studies on this in the past 2 years. That's where I've really become passionate about is momentum-based arrows and momentum and penetration, because I think so many people set themselves up for failure based off of their arrows.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can't talk people into or talk them out of certain things. I try to advise, give them advice in terms of where you should be. If most of your shots are going to be 20, 25, 30 yards and in your bow hunting career, right? The difference between a 400 grain arrow and a 650 grain arrow at generally 20 and 30 yards is almost negligible. Now, one, your bow's going to be quieter with a heavier momentum.
They're definitely quieter.
Way quieter. I mean, people want to quiet their bow down. They try to throw all these aftermarket things on their bow. You want to quiet your bow down tenfold, shoot a heavier arrow.
Yeah, man, I went from a, I don't know, it was an Axis or like a Beeman Hunter or something about 4 years ago to the Full Metal Jacket, the Easton Full Metal Jacket.
Sure.
Huge difference in the noise of the bow.
And that was probably a 50 grain difference. Imagine adding a 100 grains difference. You know what I mean? It's, that's a big. I could spend 3 hours on that, and these aren't all. This is just.
We'll have to revisit that then.
Fair enough.
Yeah, we'll definitely get back together and talk about topics specific to that. Maybe have some shorter versions or something.
Sure.
And we can talk about that kind of stuff. So, I was going to ask you about forgiveness because I think that's a hypothetical term. People kind of make that term up. They relate brace height to forgiveness, hand shock to forgiveness, their ability to shoot it consistently to forgiveness. I don't really know that I believe in that term, but we can talk about that later.
Well, I can hit on that.
Well, hit on it. Yeah, go ahead, man.
I think forgiveness
we already got we got a candid audience here, so we got a captive
they're
audience.
not going anywhere.
No, we got 'em.
The deal with forgiveness is atypically associated with brace height, right?
Yeah.
5, 6, 7, 8 inch brace height. That's the longer. The brace height is basically from the middle of the deepest part of the grip to the middle of the string.
Okay.
Right? So atypically, the longer that arrow stays on the string, the less forgiving it is. But I think that's kind of gone away. Because these platforms of these bows have gotten longer as far as the actual riser lengths.
The riser
right? So
length.
there's a little bit more stability there. I think a bow.
Now, you see some speed bows now that are 5-inch brace height.
Right, that are very shootable.
Very shootable.
Very shootable.
And then you see like the bows you would think is the most shootable bows having a 7-inch.
Sure.
6 is kind of where I tend to be.
Right, which is good because, and this is where forgiveness, where I think you can be misinformed about it. A guy that's shooting, or a woman that's shooting a 8-inch brace height bow at a 24, 25, 26-inch draw length, where most women usually fall, right? It's not getting the most efficiency because
you're not getting speed.
You're not getting that power stroke. So
every inch you go down in brace height, you lose another 10 feet per second because that's less string travel.
Absolutely.
Before the arrow leaves the string.
So a woman that's shooting a 25-inch draw length at a 6-inch brace height is going to shoot it as good as probably a guy that's shooting a 30-inch draw length at a 7-inch to 7.5-inch brace height.
Right, makes sense.
Based off the power stroke, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So
based off the string travel.
Mm-hmm. And
Okay.
how long that arrow's staying on the string.
Okay.
I think with the platforms of these bows now is forgiveness is now. I'm not going to put a newbie into the
In a
sport.
5-inch brace.
No,
yeah.
negative.
I think for me, I think the grip on the bow makes a bigger difference in the brace side because some bows I tend to torque a little bit.
Absolutely. I'll tell you this. Of anything, I'm glad you hit on that because it's probably one of the most overlooked features of a bow that most people don't buy a bow on, or they do buy a bow on, is the grip. The grip is so crucial. You'll have people, perfect example is handguns, right? You have people, the Glock crowds. You have the 1911 crowds. You have the Smith & Wesson crowds in terms of grips of a pistol.
Yep.
Like, whatever your hand style or whatever you've grown accustomed to is generally what you're going to like. I would say that the grip is probably the most important thing when you're buying a bow, is how comfortable it feels in your hand, because it is the only contact point that your body makes with that bow, right? Your anchor point, nose on the string, knuckle right on top of the jawbone or right on top of the earlobe, wherever you're putting is the only contact. That's just a contact, that's just a reference point. This right here, where your grip sits, is the single point of where that bow touches your body.
Yeah.
So it has to be right.
And everybody has a tendency, I'm sure, to clinch up when they shoot with their grip hand.
It's the number one form flaw that I could say for new people and old people alike that have been doing the sport for 20 years, grip the bow the wrong way. I mean, that's where you see a lot of torque, left and rights.
Yeah.
Honestly,
That's where the short brace sight comes in, is you're torquing the bow at the shot.
Sure, and then not to mention you hear people popping their arm. There is no reason why somebody should
pop
never
your
pop
arm.
your arm unless there are existing circumstances to where women, they have a joint issue where their arms carry,
See, a lot of guys pop their arm when they're shooting too long a draw length. They're overextending their arm.
or just a simple fix of the grip. I mean, I've shot a draw length that's been too long for me. Once I learn, I mean, I have to sometimes, but I always try to grip it the same way, and you'll never pop your arm.
Yeah.
But again, that's
rotate your arm like you can't see us, but you correct me if I'm wrong. Instead of having your hand in a vertical position where the grip is all the way through the palm of your hand,
correct.
You want to rotate your hand. At least I do. I rotate my hand where it's just that pocket between my thumb and index finger that touches the bow. Like my pinky and ring finger, they don't touch that handle of the bow.
The best way I tell people to grip a bow, honestly, it shouldn't be called you're not gripping it, right? The biggest thing I see when people grip the bow, they grip it just like a handgun. So they've got, if you're looking at the bow out in front of you and you're looking straight on like they're shooting at you, they have a 12-to-6 knuckle pattern with their four fingers, right?
Yep, makes
so they
sense.
grip it and their thumb sits kind of to the
Very
right
vertical.
of the thing. So they sit it. What that does, that rotates that radius and ulnar right into the string path. So
Yep.
what they have to do is they'll hold it like this, and then they rotate their elbow out of the way, which rotates their shoulder.
Turning the cams, severe cam.
Well, not only
everything
that,
else.
but it's uncomfortable. It's not a
Yeah.
natural position. Best way I can tell people to grip the bow is you literally take the fat part of your thumb, the pad, and you just let that sucker ride right into the flat interface of that grip. Like you're saying stop. Like if somebody's coming at you and you stiff arm them in football.
Yeah, gotcha.
Right? You stop. Basically,
Yeah,
you throw the
pinky
hand
out,
up and stop.
pinky out.
And then you just let those four fingers relax. You're not even letting it. You're pushing against that fat part of your thumb with your wrist and palm.
I wish I could see this.
90 degrees to that target. And then everything is just relaxing on the front. Your knuckles are going to be at a 45 degrees out in front of you. Once people can get that, you're on bone structure. Obviously, the most important part in terms of form breakdown is to make sure your muscles aren't incorporated into the shooting process. Once you get bone structure and you can figure bone on bone contact, you have a way more stable platform for accuracy. Bar
Yeah,
none.
you see super strong dudes that can't pull back a 70-pound bow. They're trying to muscle it and they can't pull it back.
Sure.
That's all
Sure.
form.
It's all form.
Hey, I'm going to get some
Possibly
hate mail
overload.
about this because guys are going to say, well, I can't, I've got a shoulder issue. Putting that aside, like I know guys that I work with that are not into archery, but I lift weights with these guys every day. They're stout. And you hand them a bow, like, I want to shoot your bow. And you hand them a bow, and they cannot pull this sucker back. It's
Sure.
all form. It's all muscle.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, it is form. There's technique to it.
Yeah, no doubt.
But I will tell you this, in terms of, I know this is off subject. I hear people talk about, I can't shoot a bow anymore, I've got shoulder issues, but they can do other things, right? Like they can crank a lawnmower back, or
Yeah.
they can throw a baseball, or they can do, a lot of these are the same range of motion in a sense of, there's really no reason, no reason that I can, unless you've just got some major, major damage, that a lot of these people that can do, that are still mobile, can definitely put. You don't have to shoot 70. You don't have to shoot 60. You don't even have to
Kill
shoot
the
50.
pass through on a zebra and a kudu
Sure.
with 55.
Yeah, it's very dependent on people's physical ability, but you can start off low. Start off at 35, 40, 45 pounds, 50. Build up to it. With the efficiencies of these cams and the bows nowadays, and just the improvements alone on broadheads. And again, I want to go back to this, front of center, momentum-based arrows is where it's at in terms of
That's
penetration.
why they need to come to see you. So as we start to wrap up, because we're well over an hour, and
But we got mountain ops in it, man.
I'll tell you this. If the listeners would have hit some Mountain Ops Yeti before we started all this, they'd be like, keep talking, man.
Yeah. I'm like so focused now. Like the mountain ops took me a little bit to get going. Now I'm like seeing follicles. Like
Slow
I'm like
release.
zoned in, man.
Yeah, no crash. Tell me this.
Okay.
Let's get personal. What would you say is the biggest thing you've had to overcome in the industry?
Without sounding, the biggest thing overcoming in the industry, you talking about industry wide?
Well, you getting into the business, moving from getting into the archery business to now running your own shop and being, the bow pro. Because, a lot of people that listen, or a lot of people are interested in getting into this business. They like to hunt. They love to make a
Sure.
living in this industry.
Sure.
But it's not a cakewalk. I mean, it looks sexy from the outside, but when you live it every day, we understand at the end of the day, it's still work. It's
Sure.
still a job. It still has its challenges.
Sure.
There's still business decisions that have to be made, partnerships that we negotiate, deals that we negotiate, client acquisition, finances to manage, books to balance, all these things. It's still a business, or else it doesn't work.
Sure.
So what's the biggest thing you've had to overcome?
Time management is
That's a
probably
big one.
It's knowing where to delegate and not enable people. Like I'm an enabler, right? So that's probably my biggest drawback is I'm an enabler. I usually just kind of take things upon myself, but as you start to get more clientele, as you start to build the business, you can't be everywhere at once, right? So that's always been is time management. Now, I've got to learn to deal with that personally with me. I guess that's the question you're trying to ask.
You want a good book to read?
Sure.
So my good friend and colleague Jay Papazan and Gary Keller. Gary's chairman of the board and co-founder of Keller Williams Realty. Jay's his writing partner and publisher, or not publisher, writing partner. Jay's I think president of KW Publishing. Anyway, they wrote a book called The One Thing: Surprisingly Simple Truths to Mastering Your Time. And so the principle about the one thing is, what's the one thing I can do this year, this month, this week, today? So what's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary? I read that book, life changer in my business as it comes to time management. And then a lot of that comes into leverage, which lot of people think leverage is a bad connotation. When I'm saying leverage, I'm talking about not leverage on people, but people leverage. And so how do you leverage your time? By building a good staff. There's things that only you can do, and you have to do those things because that's what makes you magical. And there's other things that other people can do better than you. I've got a great staff. I've got a great assistant, a great admin staff, a great team around me in all the different businesses. They do their jobs way better than I ever could.
Sure.
And so I don't think I'm one master or genius surrounded by a bunch of workers. I think they are geniuses in their field. They're super better at those things than I am.
Yeah, I agree. I would have
That's
to
a huge one for all entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. I would also add this into the equation is trying to please every single person. Now, that's a downfall and my saving grace at the same time.
Yeah.
And I believe that's just a part of my character, unfortunately. But again, it's unfortunate, but in the same time, I call it it's not a character flaw. It's just
No, it's not.
I don't consider that a character flaw. And I have to be realistic, right? You have to be realistic with yourself as far as making everybody happy. It's impossible. But I will die trying as long as the people are reasonable. If somebody's but here's the deal. I'm going to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
I don't know where they've come from. What background they come from. You don't know if they had a bad day. So I'm willing to give people a chance. Everybody should. But at the same time,
Nobody ever comes in here grouchy, do they?
I tell you what, it's a different atmosphere. I mean, you walk over to a service department, or you have to go to get plumbing parts, right? Or something for your home.
Somebody's crapper overflowing. They're going to be in a lot worse mood.
Trust me. They're coming in here to get their fix so they know.
Yeah,
there's a difference between once.
Their peep site come unserved. They're not going to be near as bad a mood as they are if their crapper's overflowing at home.
No.
So what would you tell somebody that's interested in getting into the outdoor industry, specifically archery? Somebody's listening to this. They want to get into this industry. What would you tell them?
Commit to doing. If you want to do it, there's no shortcut, right? If you're going to commit to it all the way. Don't halfway do it. Don't do it for the money, because that should become secondary. It should be, granted, we all have to make a living, right?
Absolutely.
But it doesn't matter. I don't, honestly, Kasey, if I was when I worked for Pepsi Bottling Group, okay, as an example, I did the very best I could based off the tools that I had to use, right? I wanted to have the best route. I wanted to have the best stores that I had there. And that was my goal, right?
Commit to be the best.
Commit to be the best, I would say. I'm just thankful. Honestly, I'm completely thankful for my raising as a kid. My dad was pretty hard on me as growing up, but he pushed. I saw a lot of good, work ethic stuff. But the perfection side of things, that also came about with the work ethic. You know what I mean? Pushing yourself to the point where, you didn't give anybody an edge. You made sure that what you did every single day was the best you could do, with perfection being the end goal, even though it's unattainable.
Yeah.
Right? You do the best you can with what you have, with your ability. I know it sounds cliche, but push yourself to the point of where, set your bow up. Giving somebody an example. Set your bow up, or set the customer's bow up as it is your own, because their recreational time is just as important as your recreational time. And a successful customer, a happy customer, is going to pay for itself in tenfold.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Treat it like it's your own. Commit to be the best. Treat it like it's your own. How can we find you? If somebody's out there and they say, this guy sounds like he knows what he's doing, how do we find you to do business with you?
Hoffy's Archery. 802 North Key, Lampasas, Texas. 512-564-1000 is our phone number here. You can ask for myself, Jason, or Ron Meacham here. Jason Six and Ron Meacham. Great staff, great guys.
Yeah,
loyal
great guys.
Bow hunters.
Great guys.
Great bow hunters. Great
Big
technicians.
Hunters.
Yep. They're good. These guys are good. Hoffy's Archery on Facebook.
Okay.
Working on a website currently. You got to understand, we've only been here just barely a year.
Yeah, y'all are just brand new.
We opened up September 26th of last year. So,
Okay. What can I do for you?
to promote, just tell people where we're at. I know
We'll do
it
it.
might be a drive for people, but we do.
Look, I've sent people from all over the state here.
We've seen that.
I try to be loyal, and we've sent people from all over the state to come here and see you, even if they bought their bow somewhere else, which don't do that, come here. But even if you bought your bow somewhere else, they come here to have you set it up. And never once have I had somebody disappointed. They always leave and they're like, that's the best service I've ever gotten.
Good.
Bow shoots better, accurate, more confident. Aaron's great. So we try to do that.
And it doesn't just stop there. I mean, it's service after the sale.
Yeah.
We make sure that.
What brands do y'all carry? Real quick.
Currently, we carry PSE,
Okay.
Bowtech, Elite, Obsession, Bear, Excalibur, as far as the crossbow line.
Yeah.
Looking to expand on the more. I mean, we're always open for other options. It's
On the arrows, you got what? You got Gold
Tip, Easton. We do carry the Oneida Bowfishing line. We
Okay.
do carry PSE in the Bowfishing line. We have a great bowfishing section. That's a very, very fast growing part of the sport. The fastest growing segment of the outdoor industry.
Sweet.
So just
The
something
bowfishing.
Bowfishing, absolutely.
No kidding.
I've done it. I did it 15 years ago, just this past year, and it was just kind of random, just kind of getting into it.
So we need to go hammer some Mountain Ops Yeti, turn on some big floodlights in the front of the boat, and go to the Highland Lakes and shoot some gar
I am totally in. I'm telling you right now, it's my second favorite thing to do.
next to turkey hunting.
Next to turkey hunting, yes.
All right, brother.
Sounds good.
Thanks,
Kasey,
man.
Thanks for your time, man.
You bet,
Appreciate
buddy.
it.
We'll catch up again.
All right, sounds good.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please follow us on iTunes and give us a review. We enjoy reading your reviews, and the ratings help us move up the list. You can also follow us on social media at Instagram or Facebook at Bucks to Business Podcast.